recent and upcoming opportunities, and then end with a couple of best practices and kind of takeaways from my experience on panels. So the agency was created in 1950. It was the NSF Act of 1950. If you're interested, you can go look at our United States Code. The references are there. The mission is very broad. It is to promote the progress of science, advance the national health, prosperity, and welfare, and to secure the national defense. And so our vision for how we accomplish that is that we want to create a nation that creates and exploits new concepts in science and engineering and provides global leadership in research and education. And so towards this vision, we invest in science, engineering, and education research. Through our research, our funded projects, we make contributions to the well-being of the nation, and we support specific areas of research that aid in securing the national defense. So specifically, we support the research community in a number of different ways. Perhaps most obvious way is through proposal-based research awards, generally to individuals or small teams. But we also bring together academics, industry innovators, government agencies to promote breakthroughs in science and engineering. We also support larger type of research activities through our support of research centers and encourage these cross-sector collaborations. And through our projects, we also support community engagement and education activities. And we work as a federal agency to develop international opportunities, collaborations with our international counterparts, as well as with other US federal agencies. We fund research and education across all fields of science and engineering. You'll notice here there are 7 science and research-based directorates, and which include biological sciences, engineering, mathematical and physical sciences, computer and information science and engineering, geosciences, education and human resources, and social, behavioral, and economic sciences. And then we have 2 supporting offices, the Office of Integrative Activities and International Science and Engineering. So they help us achieve our full potential. We have a variety of funding mechanisms. All of these are described in our guidelines document, the PAPPG. Unsolicited proposals are probably the most familiar to you. These are in engineering, they tend to be between $300,000 and $600,000 for 3 to 5 years, depending on what you're hoping to accomplish. We also offer special solicitations. These can be across NSF or across agencies, federal agencies, and they're generally specific to encourage a particular field of research. We have the career program, which is the early career investigator program. And then we also have, we call it the GOLI mechanism. It's grant opportunities for academic liaison with industry. So it's one way that we get industry involved in fundamental research. And we have some internally reviewed funding mechanisms, EAGRs, RAPIDS, and the RAISE Award. All of these are serve specific purposes. EAGRs are intended to support particularly high risk, high reward research to get that off the ground. And then RAPIDS are in response to national issues, like we just had a lot of RAPID awards related to the COVID pandemic. And then RAISE is sort of like an EAGR, but for really big teams. We also have a number of other mechanisms supporting things like the Major Research Instrumentation Awards, Research Coordination Networks, fellowships, center grants, workshop and travel supplements, and supplements in general to current grants. So we have a lot of terminology here at NSF. And so one way that helped me think about it when I was joining NSF is to make the analogy to the university structure. So if NSF is a university of sorts, you can think about our directorates. So I mentioned we have 7 research directorates, of which engineering is one. You can think of it as a college or a school as part of a university. A division, so I'm part of the Chemical, Bioengineering, Environmental, and Transport Systems Division. It's sort of like the equivalent of a department at a university. And then you can think of the programs, which fall under a directorate, as a sort of equivalent to a faculty member. There's usually at least one, there's one person responsible for that program. So this is kind of like my research group, if you will. We have in the engineering directorate, I mentioned I'm part of the CBET directorate. We have 2 other directorates that support fundamental engineering science type research. And so that would be civil, mechanical, and manufacturing innovation, and the electrical, communications, and cyber systems divisions. And then we have supporting directorates, the engineering, education, and centers directorate, and industrial innovation and partnerships directorate. Those support education type activities, and the IIP directorate supports small business innovation and technology transfer type activities. We support research. I mentioned that our mission is to support basic research, but we are also congressionally mandated to have small business innovation research and small business technology transfer programs. And so much of what we support from our core programs, I'll talk about what a core program is here in a minute, but we support things along, so this is a technology readiness ladder level, and we support things at the basic research and technological concept stage, and moving towards the proof of concept stage. Through our SBIR, STTR programs, we support translating these research outcomes to technology and commercializing it. So taking that proof of concept and taking it all the way to system demonstration. So as I mentioned, I'm in the CBET directorate. The mission of this directorate is to support fundamental engineering research that involves in some way transformation of matter or transport of mass, energy, or momentum, and the goal of which is to maximize quality and length of life, allow for sustainable practices, and develop our future workforce. So I mentioned core programs. CBET has 16 core programs. So these are the standing programs. They generally only change a little bit year to year, if at all. And so we have 4 clusters of programs. The programs, I guess the clusters are not necessarily an issue, but the programs, which I provided links to each one of them, you should have that in your PDF. But you can submit unsolicited proposals to these core programs. So what that means is your ideas, as long as they fit within the scope of the particular program, is, you're telling us what you're working on in the field, what's important in the field. And so you will, if you're familiar with the programs, you can just submit a proposal, but if you're not, you can always contact us and we can help you make that decision as to what the best program will be. So if you go click on one of those links, you'll find our program descriptions. I encourage you to read them carefully. They are, we write them, so we, if you read between the lines, you'll kind of see what we're looking for. But when you go to one of these descriptions, you'll see contacts. So I'm listed as a contact on my program, Interfacial Engineering. Kathy Walker is our Associate Program Director, and she helps with all of the programs in that chemical process systems cluster that my program is in. When you look at our funding opportunities on the NSF website, you'll see a number. So PD means program description. 20 is the fiscal year that it was published, and 1417 is my program code. So 1417 refers to interfacial engineering. So these are the programs that, as I mentioned, core programs. You scroll down a little bit later, you'll see due dates. In the engineering directorate, all of our core programs are no deadline, which means you can submit a proposal, an unsolicited proposal, at any time during the year. Again, look at the, this is the synopsis of my program description. So I've got some things highlighted here. So you'll see that the intention of the program is to support fundamental research on atomic and molecular scale interfacial phenomena, engineering of properties, processes, and system materials. So that's the key overarching goal. You'll see the words atomic and molecular scale are of great importance. And then you read down a little further, you'll see that the research projects I intend to support should have a clear vision for how the results will translate to practice in or otherwise advanced industrial, chemical, or biochemical processes. So this is the type of language that you'll see in my program description and others that should give you a sense of what belongs in a program or not. And then in some programs like mine, you'll see a list of major research areas of interest, but you also see at the bottom, I didn't highlight it, that I will consider innovative proposals outside of these specific interest areas, but we encourage you to chat with us first. At the bottom of every webpage, if you're still not sure that your project fits in a given program, you can scroll all the way to the bottom and click on what has been funded. This is a link on every single one of our program pages, and it will take you to an award search database here, and you can see the projects that have been funded out of my program, and you can filter them and essentially look at what types of research has been funded through the program. And you can also use this to see if I've already funded a project like yours, and so that means that I will be less likely to make an award. So it's always a good idea to look at this list. So I mentioned we also have, outside of programs, we have solicitations, dear colleague letters, and other special initiatives. And you can find these if you go to that program page on the Engineering Directorate website, and click on the programs link and scroll down. So you'll see that first you'll see our list of core programs, but if you keep scrolling, you'll see all the list of additional types of special initiatives and dear colleague letters, things like that down the page. And there's this information for each one of the directorates. You can also find these solicitations and special initiatives by clicking on the funding link at the top of the bar, and you can just type in, whatever, if you're looking for climate change, you could type that into a keyword and it will bring up funding opportunities that have the word climate change or the phrase climate change in their title. So you can search by area that way. As Sandy mentioned, we have this is an open solicitation. The due date this year is July 26th. So this is the Faculty Early Career Development Program. This is for early career faculty. The idea is that this is an award that sets you up as a leader in your field, both in terms of education and research, and there are specific sections that are required for that, but these are intended to be longer term awards, 5 years, a minimum of $500,000. We have an engineering, so we have a career webinar as well as a career workshop each year. So the workshop for this year is already passed, but keep an eye out for the workshop for next year. I think the application process starts around January, if I remember correctly, but keep an eye out for it. As I mentioned, you can tell what kind of funding opportunity this is by the number. So you'll see at the bottom here, NSF. So the career solicitation is NSF 20-525. So NSF, the prefix means it's either a solicitation or a dear colleague letter. 20 again is the fiscal year that it was published, and then 525 is the solicitation number. So this can help you identify whether whether there are going to be special requirements or not. We also have supplement opportunities designed to get academic graduate students internships in an industry or a national lab setting. So the idea being they will see what it's like outside of academia, and they'll have the opportunity to gain that experience that might set them up for careers outside of academia, recognizing that not all graduate students are going to be professors. So this is a 6-month internship for $55,000 to support the student in those activities. We have an opportunity out of the Emerging Frontiers in Research and Innovation program. This is an engineering directorate level program. The current solicitation, NSF 20-121, has specific topics. So the idea is that it will support transformative, high risk, high reward, multidisciplinary research. And so the specific topics for the past 2 fiscal years have been engineering the elimination of end-of-life plastics and distributed chemical manufacturing. Topics are only run 2 years at most, and so the next fiscal year 2022 will have new topics, and the topics have been announced. So it's brain-inspired dynamics for engineering energy efficient circuits and artificial intelligence, and engineering living systems. But the solicitation has not been issued yet, but I anticipate it will come out soon, so keep an eye out for it. We have the Computational and Data Enabled Science and Engineering program. It's a meta program. The goal is to support cyber-enabled or data-enabled research that goes above and beyond what you might submit as an unsolicited program to any of those core programs. The focus is on developing that theory or computational or cyber infrastructure element that would that enables a particular field of engineering. I'm one of the contacts on that, so if you have questions, please email me. But again, there's a link to the solicitation. You can read about what we're interested in supporting. This is also an active solicitation. This is environmental convergence opportunities in CBED. We intend to support convergent fundamental research that confronts a vexing environmental engineering and sustainability problem. The idea behind the solicitation is to encourage convergent research, and convergent, I guess, is confusing to some people, so I've provided a link to what is convergent research. We have a website on our webpage on our NSF website that discusses what convergence means to us and gives some examples. The current solicitation emphasizes these 3 topics here: greenhouse gas mitigation, managing the nitrogen cycle, and water purification and resource recovery, but these can change year to year. So if you're thinking about submitting a proposal to this, check it out before you prepare a proposal. This is a strange time of year because all of our solicitations and activities are largely wrapping up. It's the end of our fiscal year. So a lot of these are, the deadlines have already passed, but that doesn't mean there won't be another opportunity necessarily. It just means something's not issued. So you'll see these 2 opportunities here are kind of the corollary activity to the EcoCBET solicitation I just discussed. The top one here, Leap High, is related to the civil, mechanical, and manufacturing innovation division, and Ascent is the electrical and computer science and engineering division. We also have The critical aspects of sustainability program. This is another meta program, which means that a lot of different programs and divisions are participating. You can submit in engineering, you can submit a proposal to this anytime you submit it to a specific program. And then we have opportunities to that encourage international research efforts. So if you have a collaborator in the UK, you might consider our Engineering UKRI EPSRC agreement. So this is an opportunity to get funding from both NSF and the EPSRC. Same thing with Israel. If you have a collaboration with a researcher in Israel, you can do you can submit under the National Science Foundation opportunity. And then another example of what we offer is the solicitation on reproducible cells and organoids via directed differentiation encoding. So this is the deadline for this has already passed. I have no idea if it will be reissued next year, but this is an example of some of the more specific types of solicitations we have where we're encouraging a particular direction in the research community. Again, this is another example. The deadline for this has passed last year, but again, another example of what we're trying to encourage. There are a number of related type activities in signals in the soil. It's a hot area, so I think it's sustainable regional systems is kind of the broader umbrella for this activity. Again, these deadlines have already passed because it's the end of our fiscal year, but these are kind of long-standing solicitations that have been reissued a couple times. So you might keep an eye out if this is of interest to you. This is supporting research in microgravity and the International Space Station. The two topic areas we have right now are tissue engineering, mechanobiology, and transport phenomena. We have large center type activities. AI Institutes is one. Again, the deadline on that one is wrong, but we had a deadline this year. The themes change every year, but these are very large awards. I think this one's $20 million. So the idea is to build huge consortium of contributors toward the goal. Future manufacturing is another large effort. These are large scale, I think $2 million awards. It's again looking for convergent fundamental research and education towards future manufacturing, which I'm not involved in the solicitation, but I think it means manufacturing processes that we do not have today, new capabilities. And then finally, this is engineering research centers and science and technology centers. This is another one of these large center type grants where you have this one's more translational in focus, where you are looking to develop a team to take technology beyond the basic research stage. Again, you can find funding through our Find Funding search engine. You can also, I've got a little red arrow pointing to the email link. You can get email updates on a daily basis about new programs or opportunities that are coming out. So that I encourage you to sign up for that email to find these opportunities. So very briefly, I'm going to talk about kind of best practices. As I mentioned, if you're unsure where to submit your proposal, you can reach out to us. Just send us an email. Start with an email. If you think your question can be answered in email, there's no need to set up a time to talk, just ask. But if it's something that you have a lot of questions, we can set up a time to talk about it. The best practice is to provide us, when you send that initial email, is to provide us with a one-page research summary that talks about your specific research goals and the approaches you'll be taking, and that will help us find, or if it help us understand whether your project fits in our program, and it will also help us find the right program for you. Do not wait until the last minute to do this. So if you're thinking about submitting a career proposal and you're still not sure where you're submitting it to, it's starting to get to be too late. So think about that before you start developing your proposal. And you can also consider volunteering to serve as a panelist on any of our panels, and that will help you understand the panel review process, but also the kinds of research that's being submitted to a given program. So best practices, know your audience when you're preparing your proposal. It is best to understand how your proposal will be reviewed and the things that reviewers will be looking for. So we have our 2 intellectual merit criteria, intellectual merit and broader impacts, that are kind of the standing criteria. They'll be asked of every proposal that we review. And then if it's a solicitation, there might be additional solicitation specific review criteria that will be considered. So if you're thinking about submitting to a solicitation, read those. It's very important that your project is responsive to that. We will always have a minimum of 3 reviewers. These can be ad hoc, so it's like, mail-in, if you will, or it's like reviewing a manuscript, or a panelist, or we can use a combination of both. The ad hoc reviewers will generally be very well versed in the subject matter, and panelists, you will have at least one person who's an expert evaluator, but you might also have more generalists in the general body of research. So that's something to be thinking about when you're trying to write a proposal and thinking about who's going to be reviewing it and the kinds of questions they'll have. If you're, you can talk to your program director about how your proposal will be reviewed. Different program directors do it different. There's some programs that only use ad hoc reviewers. Some programs only use panels. So ask that question. If you've never served on a panel, there's a link to a mock panel video that kind of walks you through the process of what will happen in a discussion. And then some, I guess, frequent comments that I've heard in my years of leading panels. The first thing is to watch that. This is a link to another video, the NSF Tips for Reviewer video. And this goes over in great detail. It's like a 20-minute video, what the expectations of a reviewer are. So it walks them through what should be in their review and the things that they should be thinking about. So after they've submitted their reviews and during the panel discussion, these are the kinds of stumbling blocks that I typically see and people typically discuss. So the first thing is your research is not exciting and it's not clear what your transformative impact will be, or it's incremental in nature. So this is a very competitive process. All of our solicitations and programs have a lot of submissions, so you really want your research to be exciting and stand out. Sometimes people will talk about whether the proposal demonstrates a clear understanding of the literature or what the current state of the art is, and this goes back to novelty of your approach. This one's huge. Your approach is not hypothesis or question-driven. Question-driven is good in engineering directorate as well. The thing you want to avoid is Edisonian or quote, cook and look, or optimization type projects. You want to have a testable hypothesis and really a direction for your research. Related is the things that you're proposing, your activities or your tasks, don't actually answer those questions that you pose or test your hypotheses. They should be well linked. This one's harder to address because you need to have sufficient information to determine whether something is feasible. So that could be preliminary data. It could be pointing to the literature for feasibility support, but it depends on the project as to how much information you need to demonstrate feasibility. This next one is also kind of like the Goldilocks thing. You don't want your proposal to be too dense. It makes it really hard for the reviewer to get through it, but you also don't want it to be lacking details. You want to make sure it's as clear of typographical errors as possible, but ultimately you want the proposal to be a pleasant experience for your reviewers. You don't want to lose their attention because it's too difficult to read. Broader impacts, in terms of broader impacts, try to give a sense of where you're going, like future plans or some details about what you have considered for, this is in terms of educational and outreach type activities, but consider describing what you have planned in the future. You want to avoid the comment that this is more of what they've already been doing, or that, you know, they're just going to keep doing what they're doing. And then also you want to make sure that your budget matches what your proposed scope of work is. So, you know, you don't want to propose a ton of work, but, you know, have no budget for materials and supplies, and, you know, vice versa. You don't want to have a huge budget, but it, you know, not a lot of work proposed. And then finally, I have a bunch of links here. Again, these are in your PDF. These are all information on our website about preparing your proposal and how to talk to us, and finding your opportunities. This other one, this oldie but goodie, this is something that I found really helpful when I was on the other side of the table. It gives you some ideas for what you might include in your broader impact section. It's not a checklist, it's just things that are possible and count as broader impacts. And also when you're preparing your data management plan, there's a link here. There are different expectations across the divisions and directorates. So I encourage you to check that out. I think that's all I have. So I'm gonna stop sharing and answer questions.
Thank you, Dr. Payne. I do have a couple of questions for you. What is considered early career?
So early career, in terms of the career solicitation, is pre-tenure. So it's, I think you have to, you can't be tenured by the, is it October? There's a specific requirement in terms of early career. That's what it means in terms of that solicitation. But outside of the career solicitation, we don't have a standard definition.
Great. Now, we have some folks who are part of a project, and they go on inter-institutional cruises to the Florida Keys every 2 months. They take many types of samples, and the majority are analyzed in their lab. However, they stretch their funding as far as they can, and they have some sampling that is just not possible to do in their lab. So would NSF offer any kind of funding for like zooplankton or environmental DNA analysis?
Is this, do they say if this is part of an existing award, or?
It doesn't say if it's part of an existing award.
So if you have an existing NSF award and you are still, and you need additional funding to complete the goals of the original project, you can talk to your program director and investigate the possibility of a supplement. It's not going to be a lot of money, but it might get you over the finish line. In terms of the opportunities for biological sampling, I'm unfamiliar with most of the biological sciences directorate programs. I have some background in molecular and cellular biology, but that's not related to your question. But I would encourage you to use the find funding link and try to identify the right program director that can answer that question.
And that link is in your slide presentation, so they have access to that.
Yeah.
Perfect. Are international students eligible for NSF-funded intern program as graduate students?
I don't think so. The link to the Dear Colleague letter will specify the eligibility requirements, but off the top of my head, I think it must be a U.S. student or somebody who has a green card or permanent residency.
Great. And then could you give an example of a cook and look project?
Yeah, so I mean, that's just, it's kind of, it's science that doesn't have a real question. I mean, it could generate very valuable information, but you don't have a question in mind or a hypothesis to test. So it could be, you know, I want to get this technology from one stage to the other. So I'm going to try changing all these variables and see what works. That's kind of Kokemba.
Okay, and so with the passing of the new Innovation and Competition Act, what do you see as changes that will be coming to NSF? Will there be changes to the gold standard merit review components? Will there be separate technology directorate branch in the organizational chart? Or will PMs be wearing two hats? Will there be more meta programs or higher funding rates for existing programs?
So the budget, so it is, the requested budget has, well, it's been posted in terms of what that means for the engineering directorate. It's on our website. I'll try to find that link. But the request has come in with a 20% increase to the engineering directorate budget. Whether this is passed or, you know, actually happens is a completely different question. But the budget request also would include the creation of this new technology directorate. It would be separate from the engineering directorate. Some of the programs that are currently in engineering might go to this new directorate. That's all still very much in the works. I mean, people higher up than me are thinking about it, but it's still just a thought exercise for the most part, because it's not reality yet. In terms of the merit review criteria, our merit review criteria have been, it would take an act of Congress, a literal act of Congress to change our merit review criteria. So those are probably not going to change for some time. So that will be there.
And then just one follow-up with that. There was an announcement yesterday about US-Canada, the NSF NSERC partnership. Can you share any details you may have on this? And will this be modeled after existing UKRI and BSF opportunities? Do you know?
So I don't know. I've not been involved in that at all. I imagine it will be very closely modeled after our UKRI and BSF agreements. Those are what we call lead agency agreements. And so it usually means that the two agencies, you can submit to one or the other, and then we have like reciprocal agreements to fund the research if the one agency deems it meritorious. So that's not always the case, but I expect it would be.
And I think we have time for just a couple more. I have a couple in here yet. Just to clarify, you stated that if a similar program is funded or has been funded, then it is less likely to be funded?
So we have limited budgets. We need to prioritize the projects that we support. So we have what we call portfolios of projects. So it's projects that we've made awards to, and we think about the research that they're conducting in terms of when we're making new award decisions. So if your project is going to have similar outcomes to one that's already funded, then it would be lower priority. It doesn't mean it won't get funded, but it would really need to be clearly distinct from existing project awards.
Thank you. And then I think our final question, does NSF fund projects that are using only qualitative research in social sciences, or are quantitative methods needed as part of that research design?
So again, I'm not familiar with the social, behavioral, and economics directorate programs so much, but in working with them on some of these solicitations, I think they're looking for quantitative research as much as we are in engineering. So I think definitely talk to those program directors, but I think they're looking for studies and, well-designed research plans.
Thank you so much, Dr. Payne. That's really all we have time for right now. As I say, the chat will be downloaded, so if you have questions specific to Dr. Payne, we'll make sure that she gets those, and those will then be addressed. We will cover this Q&A in our Friday session, which runs from 4 until 6 p.m. That is in Zoom meeting format, so that allows the people who enter to participate as opposed to the webinar format. And we'll turn this over to Sandy. Thank you again, Dr. Payne.
Dr. Payne, you have just hit the ball out of the park, as I knew you would. Thank you so much for this wonderful presentation. I know that there's so many things happening at the Washington, D.C. level, and I'm very excited about the possibility of endless frontiers, especially with regards to creating more money for NSF to support the science mission, the science and technology mission for the nation. So it's wonderful, and I hope that you are there to create all kinds of new funding opportunities that will, move us forward. I just have one question for you, and with regards to applications that would go to your directorate, do you include or welcome people that would develop like a concept paper, or one page, or an abstract, just to see if there's a fit or if there's recommendation? Do you invite people to email you in advance, or is there like a CBET general email so that people can start getting feedback early on in the process?
Yeah, so we don't have a general email. So the best way, we absolutely encourage you to submit concept papers or white papers, whatever you want to call them, but keep them concise. We have a limited amount of time to read things, so one page should be sufficient. You should talk about the science or the engineering concept primarily, and give us the overview, your goals, your hypotheses, and how you're going to test those or answer those questions. And definitely try to identify the right program going in, but we encourage you to email us as a group. So we do not, it's best practice to email and CC everyone who you think might be interested in this type of whatever type of work you're talking about in your project summary up front. We want to avoid, so when you email us individually, we end up having all of these cross emails internally. And so it's best to just put us all on the same email. But we're interested in trying to help you find the right program. The reason we say something doesn't fit or is not relevant to a program is not because we're not interested in it. It's because we want you to have the best review environment, and we know the kinds of reviewers that are participating in our panels. And so the idea is to give your proposal the best shot.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Payne.